At some point, we all decided we're just bad with money. That's a lie. Nobody taught us this stuff. Hi, I'm Dave, and I'm terrible with money, but I'm trying to fix it. I think a lot of people quietly carry this belief around for years. I'm just bad with money. I'm not organized enough. I'm not disciplined enough. If I don't get investing, I always mess this up. And after a while, that story starts sounding true simply because you've repeated it so many times. But that doesn't make it true. It just makes it familiar. And the worst part is that once you believe you're just bad with money, you stop expecting anything to change. You stop seeing money as a skill and start seeing it as some kind of personality defect. Like some people were born financially competent and you just weren't. That idea is incredibly damaging. But because if the problem is your identity, then what exactly are you supposed to do about it? You can improve a skill. It's much harder to fix a label you've attached to your personality. But here's the truth that changed a lot for me. Nobody taught us this. School didn't. Our parents often couldn't. And that matters because people blame themselves for not knowing things they were never properly shown. We were set up to figure it out the hard way. Trial and error, stress, mistakes, debt, confusion. And then somehow we act surprised that so many adults feel ashamed about money. Think about how weird that is. We spend years in school learning things we may never use, but almost nobody sits us down and explains how a budget works, what interest does, why debt grows so fast, or why saving early matters. Then we become adults, get handed bills, cards, loans, subscriptions, taxes, and a checking account, and we're supposed to just know. That's not education. That's improvisation with consequences. And a lot of people have been silently blaming themselves for struggling in a system they were never properly introduced to. And our parents, in a lot of cases, weren't trying to hide anything from us. They often didn't know either, or they knew just enough to survive, not enough to teach, or money was stressful, emotional, private, even a little taboo. A lot of us grew up absorbing money habits without ever learning money principles. That's a huge difference. Habits get copied. Principles have to be taught. So if you've ever felt embarrassed that basic money concepts seem confusing, I really need you to hear this. Confusion is a normal outcome when nobody explained the system. It does not mean you're broken. It does not mean you're lazy. It does not mean you just don't have the brain for money. It means you're learning late, not failing permanently. And learning late is still learning. That matters more than people think. And the good news is that money is not magic. It's not one giant secret that only disciplined spreadsheet people understand. 5 concepts. That's all you actually need to know. Not everything, not every tax loophole, not the entire financial universe. Just a few core ideas that make the rest of it stop feeling so mysterious. Number 1, a budget. A budget is not punishment. It's just a plan for where your money goes before your habits decide for you. That's all. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to answer one simple question. What is my money supposed to do this month? Number 2, an emergency fund. This is the money that keeps one bad day from becoming 3 bad months. Car repair, a medical bill, a surprise expense. That stuff hits very differently when you have cash set aside for it. An emergency fund is not exciting, but it is one of the most practical forms of peace you can buy. Number 3, interest on debt. This one matters because debt is not static. If you leave it alone, it grows. That's the trap. A purchase does not stay the price you paid for it when interest gets involved. It becomes more expensive over time, often for no reason other than you didn't have cash when life asked for it. Number 4, index funds. This sounds more intimidating than it is. An index fund is basically a simple way to own a tiny piece of a lot of companies at once instead of trying to guess which one will win. It's boring, broad, unexciting, which is exactly why it's useful for a lot of regular people who do not want investing to become a second full-time job. Number 5, compound growth. This is the idea that money can grow, and then that growth can start growing too. It sounds small at first, which is why people ignore it. But time does a lot of heavy lifting here. The earlier you understand this, the better. And if you're learning it later, that is still infinitely better than never learning it at all. Well, that's it. 5 concepts. That's all you actually need to know to stop feeling completely lost. You can spend years feeling financially overwhelmed because nobody ever translated the basics into normal language. But once someone does, a lot of this starts looking less like genius knowledge and more like a set of tools, and tools are learnable. And once something becomes learnable, it stops feeling like a permanent verdict on who you are. Financial literacy is a skill. Skills can be learned at any age. That matters so much because people hear money conversations and assume they missed their chance. Like, if you didn't learn this at 22, the door is closed. That's just not true. Learning late is still learning. Starting small is still starting. And progress that begins at 35, 45, or 55 still counts as progress. It's never too late. I've seen people start at 45 and retire comfortably. I've seen people spend years feeling financially lost and then become the most stable person in their family because they finally learned the basics. The timeline is not the point. The point is whether you start. Money does not care when you begin. It responds to what you repeatedly do after you begin. So what stops people? Usually not intelligence. It's not laziness. It's not even math. It's shame. The shame of not knowing keeps people from ever finding out. They feel behind, so they avoid the topic. They feel embarrassed, so they don't ask questions. They assume everyone else understands this already, so they quietly keep guessing and hope they'll magically absorb financial confidence through proximity. That almost never works. Shame is such a brutal barrier because it turns confusion into silence. And silence keeps people stuck. If you feel stupid, you stop asking. If you stop asking, you stop learning. If you stop learning, the same patterns keep repeating. And then every repeated mistake starts looking like proof that the original shame was justified. That loop is cruel, and a lot of people are trapped in it without even realizing it. The shame of not knowing keeps people from ever finding out. There's also fear of looking financially illiterate, fear of opening the bank app, fear of finally learning how bad the situation really is. And honestly, I understand that. Sometimes not knowing feels emotionally safer than finding out, but it only feels safer in the short term. In the long term, avoidance gets expensive, very expensive. And then there's the feeling that it's already too late. That one gets a lot of, they think, well, if I didn't learn this in my 20s, what's the point now? That logic only creates a second loss on top of the first one. The first loss is time. The second loss is giving up because of the time already lost. That's the part you can still stop. I had my own version of this moment. I remember realizing, not dramatically, just quietly, that I genuinely did not know what I was doing with money. Not in a cute, self-deprecating way, in a real way. I didn't have a system. I didn't understand enough. I was making decisions from stress, guesswork, and vibes, and for some reason, I had expected that to produce stability. That realization hurt, but it also made things weirdly simpler because at least now I knew what the actual problem was. So that moment was uncomfortable, but it was also weirdly freeing. That because once I stopped calling myself bad with money, I could finally ask a better question. What do I need to learn next? That question changed everything. It moved me out of identity and into skill, out of shame and into process, out of self-judgment and into actual progress. So here are the steps. First, stop calling yourself bad with money. Seriously, that label is doing damage. Second, choose one concept from this video, just one. Budget, emergency fund, debt interest, index funds, compound growth. Third, spend 20 minutes learning that one thing this week. Not 3 hours, not a total life overhaul. 20 minutes, that's enough to begin because that's how this changes, not all at once, not through guilt, not through pretending you should already know everything. It changes one concept at a time, 1 hour at a time. One better decision at a time. That's how people become good with money. Not by being born that way, by learning and repeating. You're not behind. You're just getting started. And that matters because starting from honesty is stronger than pretending. Starting now is stronger than waiting for confidence. And learning late is still infinitely better than living in confusion forever. If this video felt personal, subscribe and hit like. I'll see you in the next one.